Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is a lovely herbal tea by Neil's Yard Remedies. It's called After Dinner Tea, and I bought it in my trip to London, which is over a year ago now. So it's time to continue drinking this tea. Otherwise, it might not be as flavorful. And something else I haven't done in a while is do a tag. So it's time. I'm doing the Victorian Literature Journey tag by Roz at Scally Denling about the books. And she tagged me on this, so here we go. There's a couple of questions I may not have a lot of answers for, but we're gonna do the best we can with this. Speaking in plural again. Number one, what was your first experience reading Victorian literature and how was it? Well, that's the thing. I'm not exactly sure that I know. Because growing up in school, we did probably read some in grade school. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember in sixth grade reading a lot of poetry, some of which was Victorian, including Christina Rossetti, I remember. Um, and I also remember reading my first Dickens then, which was Christmas Carol. And I remember thinking it was interesting enough, to the point that when I was later on reading more Victorian novels, I did try to read Dickens again, and it took me a while to actually read him on my own, successfully. But I do believe I was reading some of the Sherlock Holmes stories early on, um, and then there were probably other examples that I can't remember. But then when I was in high school and I was reading some 19th century literature, but a lot of it was translated from the French or some American. But then I started picking up on, getting a little ambitious and reading George Eliot, Thomas Hardy, people like that. Eventually, I started getting to Brontes and stuff. Um, and that was it. It was just gradually reading a little more and more. And so it was good. It was always there were times in my life where I wasn't reading as much or I wasn't reading as many classics at all. But whenever I got back to it, it's always been rewarding. So, second question is, has the reading of Victorian book ever brought you to tears? If so, tell us more. I got a little bit teary, surprisingly. This is going to be a lot about Dickens for some reason this time around, which is funny because I'm not reading any Dickens right now. But the ending of Tale of Two Cities, I knew what the ending was going to be. I heard it was a little emotional. I was surprised that I got a little bit, not none of these things made me weep, just, little stinging of the eyes, a slight, that kind of thing. And the other one, I don't want to say which book it was because I don't want to give away spoilers, but there was a book I was reading um a few years ago, and there was a scene in which a mother and daughter are united or reunited. Anyway, and it was, to me, slightly emotional. Maybe it wouldn't have been so much for me, except it was pretty soon, just months after, finding out about my mother's death. And I don't talk about that too much here because it's not the place for me to talk about it here. But of course, it was still very painful to me, and I think just that the timing of it made me feel, surprisingly emotional, at the time. So I don't know if it still would now, but who knows. Um, and number three, are there any people who have played a significant role in your Victorian literature journey? So probably my sixth grade teacher was a start. I would say Jeremy Brett, who played Sherlock Holmes to perfection, in my opinion. Definitely played a significant role in making me interested in Victorian literature before I even realized it was Victorian literature. And I know it carries on into Edwardian, but come on. And there have been a lot of people, of course. There's a lot of people on BookTube that that are excellent at displaying, sharing their love of Victorian literature. But probably, as far as people I know, probably my sister, like in real life, my sister Bonnie, is my closest IRL person. We don't live next to each other anymore, but we do both read Dickens and Trollope and Bronte and Gaskell and on Eliot and others, and and we talk about it as much as we can when we get together. And usually, when we get together at some point, we hit a used bookshop and find a few more novels. Next time we get together, that might happen again, but maybe we'll tone it down a little bit this time because I just have so many books. I just have so many books. I need to like not haul if possible. It's still kind of hot, but it's still good. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Um, Number 4. Do you have a favorite film or TV adaptation of a Victorian book? What about one you'd like to see made? There's a few. One is one I haven't actually seen or read the book, but I enjoyed the adaptation, which is Little Dorrit. I do have the book, like I said. I have a lot of books I haven't read yet. Um, but I haven't read yet, but I really enjoyed that. And I loved Dr. Thorne, which is one of the Barsetshire novels of Anthony Trollope's, and I think it's the second one. And Julian Fellows did a version of it, and it's fantastic. At least to me, it was. I like a lot of the Gaskell adaptations. The Wives and Daughters is probably my favorite. North and South, Cranford, all good. I don't have really. I don't really watch DVDs that much right now, and maybe I will at some point, but I mostly stream when I watch movies, and there's so little of it on available in my streaming accessibilities. It's getting annoying. I would like to watch Wives and Daughters without having to, you know, search through something that resembles bootleg. You know, it's been a long time, but patience, right? I would always like more Trollope adaptations. So talking about what I'd like to see made, I know there's been quite a few, and they were really good. I mean, The Way We Live Now, didn't mention that before. I know they did versions of the Barsetshire and the Pallisers, but I would like to see a more recent version of it. Someone who really could handle it well. I don't know who at this point, but why is it not being made? What is the holdup? I feel like I know there are adaptations being made still now, but I feel like there's a slowdown. Am I wrong? Am I just not seeing things? I don't know, but I feel like there should be more. And I saw that the Tenant of Wildfell Hall at one point was up on, like, I don't know, Prime or something, and I read the synopsis and it sounded like it was a bit off from the book, so I didn't really want to watch that. I would like to see a version of that, though, at some point. All right. Now, this is a question I don't really have an answer for, which is, which character in Victorian literature most resembles you or you identify with most? I don't identify with most characters. Occasionally something they'll say or do, I say, oh yeah, that's pretty good. Um, but I don't know. I just don't find them specifically a character that I relate to. Occasionally you'll just see something for some reason, I don't know why, but occasionally when they speak of people who do like administrative clerical type work in Trollope's books, and they're usually men, obviously, in that time period. Sometimes the nature of their work seems relatable, but not necessarily the characters themselves. A lot of the women, it's I don't know. I'm probably just not thinking, but if you can think of anyone who reminds you of me in Victorian literature, I don't know, but if I think about something, maybe I'll bring it up another time. But it just hasn't been coming to me. Number 6, do you have a favorite moment, scene, or line from Victorian literature? Tell us about it or read it to us. There's a lot of good parts from there was a part toward the ending of Dr. Thorne that I really, really enjoyed. But I don't want to explain that without spoiling. I really like the beginning of Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Yeah, this one. Well loved copy of Bleak House. There's about 3 or more, but especially the first couple of paragraphs. And I don't think you want to sit here and and listen to me reading. But it talks about London. London, Michaelmas term lately over, and the Lord Chancellor sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall. Implacable November weather, as much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth, and it would not be wonderful to meet a megalosaurus 40 feet long or so, waddling like an elephantine lizard up Holborn Hill. I mean, I'm just starting, and it's just such a great London-esque expression in the beginning of Bleak House, and I just love London so much that, I mean, there's things about London I don't like, but that, I remember when I started reading that book, I was like, okay, I'm going to keep going. So I think that's one of my favorites. Okay, number 7. Does any Victorian literature intimidate you? If so, what and why? Maybe there's some narrative poetry that might. It's been a while since I've been really into. Excuse me. A little agita going on here. Good times. I'm getting so intimidated. That's why. I just haven't been reading too much of that lately, so maybe I just have to get back into it. I not any well, I was gonna say not any specific author, but George Meredith. I attempted one of his books, and it just didn't get extremely far, so that was a little bit intimidating. Some of the nonfiction of that time needs a bit work from me, I think, and there was another one that I was thinking of. Oh well, Jude the Obscure. Not so much intimidating, like I can't read it, but just I know that if I read it, I feel like just from I've seen other people's reactions and I know how I've reacted to certain Thomas Hardy books. I don't know if that's a good idea for me, so I don't know if I'm intimidated or just cautious. Number 8, what tips would you give to someone early on in their Victorian literature journey? Start with 1 or 2 short stories. See if you like the language, and if it's a little bit of struggle, then that's a good way to start, because then it will make you, I don't know, will get your mind used to it. That sounds weird because a lot of people love to read, but if you haven't been reading of a certain time period in the past, language changes. Even if you can understand what it's saying, you may not completely be able to wrap your head around it at first, so it's probably good to start small sometimes. And that's why I'm always going to say, not everyone cares for this, but personally, I would say get The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. A lot of us are already familiar in some ways with Sherlock Holmes, so you read a couple of those stories. It's usually fast-paced, the actual short stories, so you can get in the mode, and then maybe, I don't know. It's really hard to say per person where to begin, because some people can just dive right into stuff. Like I was early reading George Eliot, and now I surprise myself because I was like, wow, I was never like ahead of my time when it came to reading. Maybe ahead of some people, but not like especially ahead. And that one isn't. George Eliot can be a little bit daunting, and yet I don't know, I did it. So I would say find maybe just find something that is somewhat familiar sounding. I know it sounds weird, but very, very popular Victorian novels might help, just because you will have, there's got to be a reason why it's popular. I don't know, but it's hard when it says what tips would you give to someone early on. It really is tailor made to that particular person. Some people, this advice would be good. Some people don't want to read the popular stuff. Some people want to read something a little more obscure, and some people are ready for it. So I think I would have to get to know the person and what their reading habits and what their comprehension habits are, and what type of genre they like, because Victorian literature isn't just one type. I would say maybe if the average person, I would say steer clear of certain things that are really, really heavy at first, and go for the faster pace books. I am currently reading Man and Wife by Wilkie Collins, and I'm finding that even though there are occasional references that are not always understandable, generally his work, especially this particular one, moves in a way that will just keep you reading and not stop you in confusion too often, or at least rarely. Find things, of course, find things, of course, with, if you can, with footnotes of some sort or an index, something where if you find a phrase or a reference that you don't understand, you could look it up instead of being like, what? Make sure you find that there is one first if you're reading a physical book, because that happened to me. I think I mentioned this before, but I was reading Villette a long time ago by Charlotte Bronte, and not that I didn't understand the book, but every once in a while, as she likes to do, she lapsed into French. And I personally don't speak French. I understand a few words here and there, but I really don't. So I lost chunks of it before I got to the end of the book and realized that there were translations at the end. Goodness sakes. So yeah, it depends. It really depends. Although, even though I think there's some French in this, maybe, or at least some big words, Jane Eyre, also by Charlotte Bronte, might be a good start. Yeah. Okay. And I don't have number 9, which is what is your top recommended read for other readers of Victorian literature. This is something that I don't have, and but no, I do, but again, it depends on the person. But I feel very deer in headlights for a moment here, because it's just so, it's these questions do really depend. But as I say as often as I can, and I know some people here I'm preaching to the choir, but nevertheless, Dickens is wonderful, Bronte's can be wonderful, Gaskell's wonderful, Conan Doyle's wonderful, Hardy's wonderful. I'm forgetting some. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna go on for about 100 years. This is wonderful, but, and there's other types thing. Alice in Wonderland. Did we forget about that? So that might be recommended for some people. I don't know. Not my favorite, actually. But really, if you haven't picked up a Trollope, Anthony Trollope, yet, do it. I know there are some of his books that aren't particularly good, or great, I should say, but that's only a handful of them. Most of his books I have found to be really interesting, gripping, and yet funny and personable. And so if you haven't started him yet, go for it. If you've read the Brontes but not Anne Bronte as much, go for her, because she was, I think, my favorite. So give her a chance. And I could go on for 100 years with other recommendations if I started thinking long enough, but I think I've spent enough time yammering about in this lovely tag. And it also says to tag people. I think the people have been tagged already, but if I always say, consider yourself tagged if you've watched this and you want to answer these questions. If you have a channel, do so. If you want to answer in the comment section here, go for it. If you like these kind of conversations and you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe and all of that, and like this video if you can. If you like, don't lie if you don't, or if you just don't want to, it's up to you. Anyway, that is all for now for this particular tag. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and Victorian literature filled day.